In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace a rear brake caliper on this Hyundai Sonata. Located behind your rear wheel, let's get started. Use a 21mm socket, remove all 5 lug nuts, and then pull the wheel off. Keep in mind, if your vehicle has these hubcaps, they will want to come off as soon as you pull the lug nuts off, so remove those as well. From the backside of the caliper, let's remove the two 14mm bolts that hold the caliper onto the slider pin and therefore the bracket. Break them free. Pull them off the rest of the way. Do the same to the upper. You can take a little pry bar, squish the caliper in through this opening. This is going to allow you to remove some pressure off that piston so you can more easily remove it off of the bracket. I'm going to take this off and set it aside right over here on top of the sway bar. I basically don't want to pull on the brake hose. That is why I'm not going to let it hang. Just secure it up here. Use a 14mm socket and remove the 2 bolts holding the caliper bracket onto the knuckle. I'm going to leave this in a few threads, that way it'll hold the caliper bracket while I undo the top one the rest of the way. Finish removing the bolts. Inspect them. If they're in poor condition, you're going to want to source new ones. These are rusty, so I'll clean them up, but they are still reusable. Take the bracket and the pads right off. Let's remove the pads from the old caliper. These are somewhat stuck in here. Might need a hammer to tap them out. Let's separate the caliper from its bracket. Use a 14mm socket. Take the 2 bolts out. If you don't have an impact of some sort to take them out, you're going to have to hold it, maybe put a pry bar right through the slot so you can break these bolts free without it turning on you. We're going to take these out and set the caliper itself aside. What we need is the bracket so that we can lubricate the areas that the anti-rattle clips slide into. You want to put a little bit of silicone paste or brake grease if you don't have silicone paste that is rated for high temperatures for brakes. Put a little bit of silicone paste on this area where the anti-rattle clips go. You don't need a thick layer because if you put too much on, it's just going to squeeze out and get on the rotor. The rotor rides right in the middle. Take your new anti-rattle clips, slide them on. Make sure they lock in fully. Flip this over. We'll do the same thing over here. And then we can move on to lubricating the slider pins, which is also very important. Make sure that this is fully seated. Remove the slider pin. As you can see, there isn't much grease on it. I'm going to apply some of my silicone paste. Once again, if you don't have high temp silicone paste, use brake grease. Put some right in the folds of the boot. That's going to keep it nicely lubricated over time. Work it in, slide the pin all the way down. Once the pin is in and you see air, just squeeze the boot and press the pin at the same time. That's going to get all the air out of here. Optionally, you could also use a little pocket screwdriver. Pry up on the boot. Just be very careful not to tear the boot. Flip this around, and we'll do the same to the other slider pin. Get some grease in there. Work it in. A little bit on the slider pin. The fact that I put the brush in there made it so I got grease right on the edge of the boot. And that's going to get right up on the edge of the pin and lubricate it, keep it nicely sealed up. Get that air out, any excess grease. Wipe it, if necessary. You don't want grease all over the place here. Now on this caliper bracket, you want to take the inboard pad, which is going to sit on the side with the slider pins. Caliper bracket sits like this on the vehicle, and you want the pad with the wear indicator to have the wear indicator on the bottom. So slide it in at an angle and make sure that it can fully seat in here. Just like that. Don't press it in too far. We'll do the same to the outer pad. This one does not get a wear indicator. There we go. This caliper bracket is ready to go on the vehicle. Take your caliper bracket, slide it over the knuckle and the rotor. Have your bolts ready so you can start them in. That way it'll hold the caliper bracket in place. Once they're started on, let's bottom them out. All right, let's torque these two bolts to 60 foot-pounds. All right, use an 11mm socket and remove the banjo bolt that goes through the hose and into the caliper. Let that drain into a collection bucket. There will be brake fluid inside this caliper. There we go. Inspect the brake hose to make sure that the copper washers that were on there didn't get stuck on it. If they did, you'd want to pop them off. Clean this with a rag to make sure there's no debris. Now take the new banjo bolt, slide it through the same side that the other one came through with one of the new copper washers, and then on the other side put another copper washer on, basically sandwiching the hose in between the two. Take your new caliper, make sure that this little fork cutout gets the brake hose going through it, and then start on the banjo bolt into the threaded hole on the caliper. This new one is also an 11mm, so tighten it up. We can finalize the torque once it's mounted on the vehicle, but if you just snug it enough so it doesn't leak, well, you won't keep losing brake fluid. Take the caliper, slide it over the bracket, make sure it goes over the slider pins, just like that. Have your two bolts ready to start them on and resecure the caliper. Just move it around as needed to line things up. Once you have them started, snug them up. We'll torque these to 20 foot-pounds. 16 foot-pounds is the torque for this banjo bolt, which we can now torque since this is mounted. Oh, looks like it was pretty much already there. What we want to do really is squish these two copper washers just a little bit to create a nice tight seal. Let's pop the bleeder screw cap off of the bleeder screw on the caliper, and then we're going to use a 10mm wrench, break this free. We're going to do what's called a gravity bleed, and that entails letting gravity pull the fluid into the caliper, fill it up, and push all of the air out. This procedure should get most, if not all, of the air out of this caliper. However, you may still need to do a manual brake bleed once the job is done. If you think you need to do that, you'll see how to at the end of the video. For now, let's just wait for a steady trickle of brake fluid coming out of here with no more air bubbles, just through the gravity bleed. We're getting a steady trickle of fluid, no air bubbles, so let's close this off. There we go. Snug it. This doesn't need to be very tight. You don't want to break it. Wipe this down. Get any brake fluid off of the caliper. If needed, you can rinse it with some brake parts cleaner. Cap off the bleeder screw. Let's put the wheel back on. At this point, if your vehicle has a hubcap, you're going to want to put that on since the lug nuts go over that. You want to make sure that the cutout for the valve stem lines up, just like that. Start on all 5 of your lug nuts. We'll bottom them out in a cross pattern to seat the wheel, and then we'll torque them also in a cross pattern. That way everything can seat evenly. "79 foot-pounds in a cross pattern." Here we go. Double check them. All right, that's torqued. Once you locate the master cylinder on the driver's side near the firewall, remove the cap. If there's a lot of dirt around it, wipe it off. Turn it counterclockwise and set it aside. Now let's remove all the old fluid that's in here. Do the best you can. Use a fluid extractor, a vacuum pump, whatever you have that'll get all this fluid out. That's all the brake fluid I'm going to be able to get out of it. Let's stop right there. This braking system takes .3 or .4 brake fluid. I have a .3 bottle right here that I'm going to fill this reservoir with. Let's fill it all the way to the max line. Once it's full, cap it off. We are now ready to start the bleeding procedure. The first caliper we're going to bleed is going to be the right rear caliper. That's the passenger side rear. We then cross over to the driver's side front. That's the left front caliper. Then, of course, top off that master cylinder so you don't run it too low on fluid. Then you go back to the left rear caliper. That's the driver's side rear. Lastly, you do the passenger side front or the right front, and then, of course, top it off again. After you've bled all 4 calipers, if the pedal feels spongy still, you want to bleed again in the same sequence until you're happy with how it feels. We are at the right rear caliper. This is where we're going to start. I'm going to pop off the bleeder screw cap first. Sometimes you can use a little pocket screwdriver for that. And then you're going to use a 10mm wrench to break this free. I also have an assistant in the vehicle ready to pump up the brakes, and they're going to hold pressure after a few pumps. That's going to push the fluid through the system. Additionally, I have a little reservoir with a hose that's going to collect all my fluid. And at this point, we are ready to start. So you can go ahead and pump. All right, they're holding, so I'm going to crack this open. We're going to have, oh, there we go, hit the floor already. We're going to have air and fluid come out. And you can go ahead and pump again. All right, holding pressure. Go again. We're just going to do this until we have no air bubbles and clean fluid coming out of this bleeder screw. All right, pump again. Okay, there are no air bubbles coming out, but the fluid is very dark, so let's go a few more pumps. Pump again. Okay, go again. Go again. All right, you can let go now. I'm gonna remove this and clean off any brake fluid that may have dripped off. Use brake parts cleaner if needed, and cap off the bleeder screw. And now we're gonna move to the left front. That's the driver's side front caliper. We're now at the left front caliper. Gonna do the same thing, pop the bleeder screw cap off and put my little collection receptacle on with the hose. Have a 10mm wrench ready and go ahead and pump up the brakes. All right, holding pressure. Open this up. Go ahead and pump again. Pump again. All right, pump again. All right, let's do this one more time. Pump again. That's pretty clean right there. No air bubbles. You can let go. Take this off. Once again, wipe anything off that may have dripped. Use brake parts cleaner if needed. Cap this off. Now let's go top off that master cylinder. We've bled 2 calipers and we don't want it to get too low. And then we'll move to the right rear and then the left front to finish it off. Now let's top off the master cylinder, keep it nice and full. Then move to the left rear caliper and bleed that one. And then finally finish off with the right front. Everything's all bled. Let's fill this up one last time. Make sure it's up to the max line and cap it off. Once everything is done, put the wheels back on, torque them to 79 foot-pounds in a cross pattern, and take it for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.